because Kate had been moaning that you'd been gone a long time watching the football.
I'm almost certain that when I came out, I came over and he was here.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. It's just been announced that the official investigation into the 15-year Madeleine McCann disappearance is about to be shelved. So, is it all finally over? Case unresolved, game over. If you're familiar with the McCann case, you'll know that it's the gold standard in how to look for a missing child. The key tool to use to look for a missing child is public relations. The parents of JonBenet Ramsey also used PR with amazing effectiveness, and that's also an unsolved case. And there was also no successful prosecution in that case, ditto the Amanda Knox case. This incredible strategy of using PR to control or influence the narrative was employed by a pair of doctors who lost their 3-year-old daughter when they left her unattended on the night of May 3rd, 15 years ago. She's never been found since. What you don't do, say the experts, when a child goes missing is rely on the local police or detectives. If you want to solve your case, it helps to undermine the detectives, call them names, and even take them to court. Instead of searching, hire a slew of PR people and focus on fundraising. And so here we are 15 years later. In the JonBenet Ramsey case, we've just passed the 25-year anniversary and both unsolved cases. So is this the end? Has the McCann Circus finally ended? Before we get to the rest of this episode, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So, of course, it was through PR that the McCann case became the most high-profile and expensive search for a missing child in true crime history. It's also officially still unsolved. So, it's the most high-profile and expensive unsuccessful search for a child as well. When Nora Corrin went missing in Malaysia recently, the experts associated with the McCann case came forward to lend their gold standards expertise to that search. Although Nora was found by a local hiker, and even though there was no evidence she was abducted, the experts insisted she was, and the inquest that found that she wasn't abducted was later partially overturned. I think that makes the Nora Corrin case officially an unsolved abduction case as well then. If you watched the Netflix documentary The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann, you will have realized the peculiar fascination and lengths that have been taken to link Madeleine's mysterious disappearance to, let me just spell it out for you. It's a word that starts with a P and it's spelled Pedophiles. So all of these cases are linked to those sort of things in the public imagination. Now let's reflect on 10 points highlighting the ancient and recent history of the McCann case. Number 1, as early as June 30th, 2007, the Portuguese publication Sol published an article titled Pact of Silence, written by Margarita Davim and Felicia Cabrita. This article accused the McCanns' friends, many of whom were also doctors, of agreeing as a group, and this group is known as the Tapas 9, not to talk about what really happened on the night of May 3rd, in the evening of 2007. Besides the McCann couple, the remaining Tapas 7 were effectively witnesses to the incident. The article implied that the group was hiding something crucial to finding out what really happened on the night of Madeleine's disappearance. Interestingly, although the Pact of Silence article appeared in the Portuguese media as early as within 2 months of the incident, around about, I think it was late June 2007, it didn't appear in the British press until as late as November and December, around 7 months after the incident. Why do you think that is? And I will be putting up a separate video going through that article in detail. So we'll be going through the Pact of Silence article. What is that article about? And was it credible? So this is just one little excerpt from the article. It reads as follows, quote, "At the tapas bar, from bartenders to staff from the kids club, criticism is whispered. We have a creche where they left their children for most of the day, where they could be until 11:30 at night without spending another euro. They could have used our babysitters who stay with the children in their rooms until 1 p.m. In this case, they would have had to pay an extra fee, but these people looked like they could afford it." An employee comments, concluding that this was a very strange group that never stayed with their children, end quote. Number 2, the Tanner sighting emerged immediately as the most credible lead in the Madeleine McCann case. One member of the Tupper 7 claimed to have actually seen the abductor carrying Madeleine. After 5 years, it turned out that Tannerman was actually Dr. Julian Totman, who actually stayed at the same hotel, but unlike the Tapas 9, was actually using the child creche facilities, and he was carrying his child back to the hotel from the creche after dinner. The Tanner sighting claimed Tannerman was carrying Madeleine away from the hotel, in other words, across the street from the left to the right, when Totman was actually crossing the street from the right to the left. But this is the gold standard in searching for a missing child. Number 3, traces inside apartment 5A. When dogs were brought in to search the McCann's holiday apartment in August 2007, they alerted to several locations, including behind the couch in the lounge and in the cupboard of the McCann's bedroom. Cadaver odor was also found by the dogs in the rented Renault Scenic. Despite forensic evidence found on the walls and under the tiles of possible human DNA, and despite blood being positively identified, this evidence seems to have been successfully disputed. And despite someone seeing the McCann's rented vehicle airing overnight with windows and doors apparently open, this evidence, because they did find evidence inside the vehicle, seems to have been successfully disputed as well, calling it the smell of fish blood or groceries. Number 4, a witness has deja vu. When the McCanns arrived back in Britain, footage recorded of one of the McCann's parents carrying one of her siblings as they emerged out of the airplane triggered a memory or flashback from someone who thought he saw a similar man carrying a small girl close to 10 p.m. on the night of the incident. This man was actually questioned by the Polizia Giudiziaria, and I'll give you his first name. His first name was Martin. Number 5, photos of Madeleine. If the McCann case is the gold standard in how to search for a missing child, the first step in that process seems to be to provide searchers with photos that look nothing like Madeleine. Find photos of a almost 4-year-old child that are 2 years old or a year old. Kate McCann also put a photo on the cover of her book that looks nothing like the Madeleine that actually disappeared. It's very strange, don't you think, to look for someone who doesn't resemble the person missing and then not find them or know what happened to them. Number 6, a revolving door of suspects. In the same way that there's been some fuzziness around photos of Madeleine, including the photo of Madeleine by the swimming pool, the original sketch of the first suspect, Tannerman, was described as an egg with hair. And so, over the years, this hole in the place of the suspect's face was filled each year at anniversary time by a revolving door of suspects. Each new suspect was typically introduced as the latest breakthrough by the McCann's PR spokesman. Everyone would get very excited that that progress was being made in the investigation, and more money would then be contributed, and the investigation would go on its merry way as, once again, the gold standard for how to search for a missing child. Number 7, reenactment for cameras but not cops. If the biggest challenge during the McCann Circus was trying to keep a straight face and not smile when trotting out the latest suspect, something else that was rather bizarre was the participation of members of the Tapas 9 participating in a reenactment for the cameras, but not when cops actually requested the same thing in order to test their versions. I'm not sure if there's a better illustration for investigating your case on camera, for doing your sort of investigation of your case on camera as the gold standard versus doing it the silly way by actually talking to the police when they ask you to. 8. Burglary gone wrong. At various times, Madeleine's abduction has been described as a burglary gone wrong, only there were no signs of a break-in. There was not even the sound of a break-in. I've travelled to Praia de Luz, I've stayed there, and those shutters make an incredible racket even when they are properly opened. And now someone apparently broke in through those shutters, and yet nobody actually heard anything at night. And so there's no evidence of an intruder, and yet you keep hearing about, oh, it's a burglary gone wrong. And Madeleine herself didn't seem to know she was being abducted and cry out while she's being carried through the streets of Praia de Luz. Number 9, the McCanns versus Amaral and the European Court of Human Rights. Many of us in the true crime community have been awaiting the verdict of the case taken to the European Court of Human Rights. It's the long-running court battle of the McCanns versus the detective investigating their case. That detective has alleged that the McCanns themselves were involved in the disappearance of their daughter. And they've sued him for defamation ever since. The detective has won 2 of the most recent court battles, and the final leg of this battle, of this legal marathon, has been at the European Court of Human Rights. And that legal process has apparently been underway for the past year or 2. Except we don't seem to know the outcome. And also, the investigation is now being scaled down and basically cancelled, given, or let's put it this way, within the context of us not knowing the outcome and this whole case being heard at the European Court of Human Rights. What do you think that means? And then finally, number 10, the Bruckner farce. The Bruckner farce played out at a very good time for the McCanns within the last 2 years. In other words, at the same time that everything was being heard at the European Court of Human Rights. It was something that also Detective Amaral predicted. He predicted that this perfect, in inverted commas, perfect witness would be trotted out. And so he was. And how many times can you be told an arrest is imminent with the latest prime suspect only for no charges to be filed, for no trial to be held, etc.? But if you were a judge at the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, and also paying attention to German prosecutors hollering for almost 2 years, basically saying, "We got him," you could be forgiven for thinking the theory of and do I need to spell the word out again, the word that starts with the P theory, for thinking that the P theory is rock solid, rather than the farce that it is. Besides that, the Netflix documentary would also have given you plenty to reinforce the farce theory of this case in the public headspace. It's the McCann version of the intruder theory in the JonBenet Ramsey case. And so, where to from here? Believe it or not, Portuguese journalists were already referring to the McCann Circus as the McCann Circus in their Pact of Silence article way back in June 2007, barely 2 months down the track after the incident had occurred. The good news is the circus is finally closing down, and so we're unlikely to see more calls for public funds to finance this gold standard search. By the way, when I was in Praia de Luz in 2019, on a number of stop signs in the little holiday enclave, so you'd have a stop sign, a red stop sign, and on a number of those stop signs, you'd actually see the word McCann written or stenciled on it. So it would be stop and then the word McCann and circus. That's there right now in Praia de Luz. Is the game over? Well, hopefully not. With the investigation closed, Madeleine's status still has to be determined. Hopefully it will be made legal or official that Madeleine is no longer alive and an inquest launched. As long as the investigation had been continuing, there was this assumption that Madeleine was still alive. With the investigation now scaled down, what do you think that means? Doesn't it mean, well, we're not searching for Madeleine because we don't think she's out there anymore? Unlike Operation Grange, whose ambit was to investigate all possible lines of inquiry except those involving Madeleine's parents, it's possible an inquest might actually raise some uncomfortable questions that have long been dormant or suppressed. For my part, it'll be a relief not to read any more banal articles from the press in Great Britain, beating the same drum and revealing to what extent substantial elements of the British media not only lack merit, but in many cases have been overtaken by fake news. You might not think fake news is a big deal, but if you look at what is happening right now in the world, in terms of the pandemic and also war, fake news is playing an incredibly significant role and also costing people's lives. And so, as usual, to the extent that we can be misled by a single true crime narrative, misled to believe in an outcome in defiance of evidence or even logic, it demonstrates how nations, our entire nations, can be misled politically or, as I say, in situations of war, based on simply repeating the same banal tune until the mindless majority are humming along. And so this is why we really need to think critically, or let's put it even more simply, we need to think. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.